Hello, I'm Bob Lancer, and the purpose of this show is to lead you into the life you truly want to be living. It is also about helping you to better understand and relate with others, especially the children in your life, in support of their great potential. So this show is for anyone who wants to live with more peace and purpose and positive power to soar into the fulfillment of our greatest promise. One of the great secrets of child discipline is something we can call proactive parenting. To be proactive in your parenting means that you take steps to provide your child with the influences he needs to behave well and to develop into her greatest potential before the child displays a behavior problem. To the extent that you practice proactive parenting, you will feel more in control. Proactive parenting also protects the child from the pain and the pattern of getting into trouble. To parent proactively, you need to understand the basic influences that go into the shaping and formation of a child's personality and behavior patterns. Modeling represents one of those influences. Children become like those they spend time with. Therefore, model the behavior that you want. When your child displays an inappropriate behavior pattern, examine your own self-conduct to see how you may be modeling something similar. For instance, if your child treats his mother disrespectfully, it may be a pattern he has learned from the disrespectful way that his father routinely relates to his mother. If a child steals, that behavior may be learned, in part, from dishonest behaviors that one of the parents displays, like sneaking into events without paying, or using other ways of getting free or discounted goods or services through deceptive means. If a child is making things up, one of the parents may be using a lot of fabrication. If a child argues much, one of the parents probably demonstrates an argumentative pattern. The shy child probably has at least one shy parent, even if that parent has learned to hide shyness behind a mask. The child who displays much anger is probably exposed to at least one very angry parent. The child who displays an overly aggressive physical pattern may have adopted that as a result of being spanked repeatedly or being treated with or exposed to excessive physical aggression. The child who demonstrates a pattern of helplessness may be reflecting an attitude of overdependency or low self-confidence expressed either consciously or unconsciously by one of the parents. The point of understanding the role of modeling is not to chastise yourself for your child's behavior problems. It's to help you to be more understanding when your child demonstrates a problem that you have taught her, and to encourage you to work on improving your own self-conduct to bring out a higher level of behavior from your child. Not all modeling comes from parents. Allowing a sibling to behave poorly toward or around a child will produce the same problems, as well as allowing your child to spend much time around other children who display behavior problems. As you work on recognizing and overcoming your own weaknesses and on fulfilling your own higher potential, your modeling leads your child into a higher level of self-expression. It also teaches your child to remain dedicated to self-work for personal development. Dedicating yourself to your own ongoing personal development is the foundation of successful, proactive parenting, because you are the instrument through which you influence your child. As you improve your self-management, you will improve your results in all areas of life, including your relationship with your child. Being effectively in charge with your child begins with being in charge of yourself. In addition to self-work, being a proactive parent involves taking charge of your child's surroundings to the extent that you can. Every influence in your child's environment impacts your child's behavior and development. Providing children with clean, orderly, harmonious surroundings that cultivate the child's finer tastes and sensibilities is a proactive way of bringing out a child's best. The quality of relationships surrounding the child also influence the behavior that eventually comes from the child. As mom and dad relate in a kind, respectful, authentic way with one another, they nurture and support their child's capacity to relate well with others and even to treat himself well. The more you rush around a child, the more uptight and frustrated you feel around a child, the more you clash with others around a child, the more chaos and instability you expose a child to, the more you foster behavior problems in that child. While you cannot control every aspect of your child's surroundings, you can at least remain dedicated to growing into your own higher potential, which provides your child with at least one positive influence. You can always do at least small things to improve the influences impacting your child. If you believe your child may be exposed to bullying at school, you can contact the teacher and work on changing that. If you and your spouse argue hotly in front of the child, you can work on improving your self-control. While you can't stop your spouse from arguing with you, you can change what you do and come up with better ways of relating with your spouse. Parenting really is the most challenging job on earth. When things aren't seeming to be going very well, it's tempting to feel helpless, to feel powerless. But helplessness is always just an imaginary condition. Everything you say, think, feel, and do for what you want works. As you develop and apply your skills and knowledge, you are bound to achieve higher results. This applies to every area of life. One of the most difficult challenges that parents face has to do with the parent's sense of self-respect. It's hard to feel good about yourself when you worry about not being able to provide your children with the best that money can buy. It's hard to maintain self-respect when you feel incapable of providing your child with a loving relationship between you and your spouse. No matter how hard we work at controlling and directing our lives, there are times when we seem to hit a wall. Then we feel that it's impossible to succeed in our own eyes, and we then fear the shame of failing in our children's eyes. When this happens to you, remember that helplessness is an imaginary condition. You do not have to do more than you can. Whatever your current situation in life, as you work on improving your skills and developing your knowledge, you will inevitably create better and better situations. One of the most important skills that we need to develop is a mental skill, because it's easy to imagine that our best is not good enough. It's easy to imagine that all that we've tried so far has accomplished nothing, and that we really are stuck. Recognizing when you're in that negative mental state, when you're giving yourself that negative mental mindset, when you're holding on to that negative belief, is the beginning of your freedom. Because once you realize that your problem is self-imposed by your imagination, by imagining that things are not going to improve, by imagining that you lack the power to improve things, by imagining that you really are stuck, by imagining that nothing you do will work, you give yourself that depressing situation. And by letting go of that imaginary condition, you set yourself free from that. One of the most important areas of self-work for parents to do has to do with attitude. If you feel pessimistic, if you feel helpless, if you feel depressed or discouraged about your possibilities, that attitude is draining you of power. And it's an attitude that you can let go of if you just stop holding on to it. As long as you hold on to your own negative attitude, you're passing it on to your child. The way to free yourself from a negative attitude is to look at it squarely. Open your feelings to consciously feel exactly what you are feeling about yourself, about your life, about your child. Really look at what you think is going on and what you think is possible. Really look at your attitude and your ideas about life, however painful or negative they seem. As you do this, you will gradually see that you are simply re-experiencing an old, learned emotional and mental pattern that you have probably been carrying since childhood. Just releasing yourself from the attitude and idea that tells you you are stuck sets you free. If you find yourself feeling helpless when things aren't going your way, that means that somewhere along the line, you developed a pattern of regarding yourself as incapable of achieving the goals that you set for yourself. And that way of looking at yourself is the source of depression. When you see that how you're seeing yourself in your mind isn't working, you can let it go. But if you're not really conscious if you're not really paying attention to what's going on in your mind, you simply believe that you are helpless when all that's really going on is that you are identifying with an idea of a helpless person. To the extent that you feel trapped, hopeless, or stuck in your circumstances, that is a pattern, an inner pattern that you learned. You were probably exposed to a parent who demonstrated that pattern, even though that parent may have been really good at hiding it. But by making your own inner patterns conscious, you will discover that you can let go of those that aren't working, freeing yourself to work on making your greatest dreams come true and living in peace and faith in the now. By working on improving how you act, think, speak, and feel, you empower yourself to produce better and better results in every area of your life, including parenting. A major aspect of self-work for proactive parenting has to do with working on the transformation of your reactive patterns. The opposite of proactive parenting is blind, reactive parenting. Reactive parenting waits until the child displays a behavior problem to do something about it, and then simply reacts automatically to what happened before first observing closely to clearly understand the response that's needed for a better outcome. One problem with reactive parenting is that every time that a child demonstrates a problematic behavior, that behavior becomes a more ingrained habit. This means that it proves more difficult for the child to behave any better. And it means that you need to work that much harder and longer to produce a positive change. Another problem with reactive parenting is that it makes the child in charge because her behavior causes you to react. Reactive parenting means that you blindly trigger off when your child behaves in a way that you believe needs correction. You fall into an automatic way of opposing your child. You might blurt out a correction or criticism, begin nagging or pleading, start yelling, threatening, or you may even strike your child in a reaction. But when you react, you're not basing your thoughts, speech, actions, or emotions on a clear understanding of what your child really needs from you to fulfill a great potential. The goal of proactive parenting is to transform reactions into consciously selected responses based on understanding. To transform your reactions into constructive responses begins with becoming more conscious of how you react and of what results from your reactions. Consider what your reactions cause. Let's say that your toddler throws a metal object at you and it hits you in the head. You might react suddenly, automatically, by striking the child. If you observe the results, you see that what you have achieved is to cause your child to distrust you, to fear you. This means that he begins relating with you as an enemy. You begin losing that precious, loving bond between you that so fulfilled the both of you. And in the absence of that loving bond, the child cannot behave well. Hitting children teaches them to hit because it models hitting. You run the risk of inciting the child to begin hitting you when he gets big enough to retaliate forcefully. You will find that hitting a child never really solves a behavior problem. It may get control of the child in the moment, but the collateral damage proves far more costly than the momentary gain you achieved. Parents hit their children routinely. Why? Because they're not paying enough attention to the actual results they're getting. Paying close attention, being more conscious during your interactions with your child, making the deliberate effort to be present and aware in the now is a form of proactive parenting that will reveal for you ever wiser, more effective, more loving, more satisfying, and more successful ways of relating with your child. One reason why parents do not pay enough attention to the results of their reactions is that they themselves were raised in a family culture of blame. They were taught by their parents that if you feel anger toward a child, it's the child's fault. If you hit, yell, or chastise the child, it is the child's fault. In other words, a child is raised to feel responsible for the way that the adults behave. Instead of blaming your child for the ways that you react that you don't like, including scolding, hitting, yelling, nagging, and reacting with angry feelings, accept responsibility for your responses. Taking responsibility for your reactions begins to turn those reactions into more positive responses. That's the amazing power of self-awareness. Review your actions and reactions toward your child. When you yell, for instance, remember that there really is a better way to deal with that child's behavior. You don't yell at a child because he doesn't listen. You probably yell because you were raised by a yeller. And if you paid more attention, you'd discover the more you yell, the worse your child's listening becomes. You may not know what else to do in the moment, but if you remain under your own self-control and open and dedicated to finding a better way to bring out what you want from your child, you will find it. It takes patience. It takes perseverance. One challenge with children occurs when they get overly worked up. After playing hard for a while, the child may find it impossible to settle down enough to focus on homework, to follow your directions the first time, to take a bath, to stop roughhousing with his sibling, to stop yelling for fun. You may seize control of the situation by repeating yourself over and over, and then by finally yelling a few times, but you don't need to settle for this. When you react with frustration toward your child, you see your child as an enemy. And this takes all the joy and love out of parenting and sets the stage for more draining power struggles between you. When you think about what else you can do, you might come up with the idea of monitoring your child's play more closely so that you can step in to calm her down when she's beginning to get worked up. You might have a calm and loving discussion about the behavior you expect after play. You might institute the consequence of missing out on an opportunity to play if the problematic behavior after play continues. When you feel that you've tried everything and nothing else but yelling works, you are just placing yourself in a state of imaginary helplessness. There are always alternatives, always superior alternatives. We can always grow into a higher level of being and function more effectively if we remain dedicated to doing that. You will come up with your own better ways of responding if you remain open and dedicated to finding better ways. But first, you have to be willing to stop reacting in the same old ways, to let go of your anger and stress, to recognize when it's rising up, to not blame your child for how you feel. Reject the notion that your child is responsible for the ways that you react. Another important aspect of proactive parenting has to do with understanding the importance of your energy level. When you allow yourself to become too fatigued, you have lost your capacity to exercise the level of self-control and patience for you to respond in the best way possible to bring out the best possible behavior from your child. When you feel tired, your creativity and problem-solving ability is diminished or altogether lost. Confusion is bound to take over when you're feeling tired, causing you to relate with your child as the cause of the ways that you feel, think, speak, and act. Human beings simply cannot behave very well when we're tired, and this holds true for children as well as for adults. When your child is tired, her behavior must regress, and when your child is behaving poorly, consider the possibility that maybe the child is just too tired to exercise a higher level of self-control. The child cannot learn in a tired state, so trying to teach him a lesson using discipline will have little or no or even negative impact. The parent who argues, "But my child has to learn that just because you're tired does not give you the luxury of behaving poorly," doesn't realize that he himself has not learned that lesson, because it's a lesson that's not teachable. Tired human beings behave badly, period. We treat one another badly when we're feeling tired. We make poor choices and decisions. We cause accidents. We make mistakes. We have to be careful about trying to teach children lessons that are really not teachable, expecting them to behave in ways that are really not human. The only way to avoid the negative consequences of a tired state is to avoid the tired state. If you are pushing yourself into exhaustion, you have to practice a more balanced way of living. Because when you're trying to solve problems and achieve goals from a tired state, your level of functioning is lowered. At the same time, your life loses meaning because you can't enjoy your life when you're tired. Forcing or letting children stay up too late guarantees that they fall into behavior problems. When your child is behaving poorly, it is quite likely that she's just tired. She might be tired after school. She does not need harsh discipline to get her behavior in line. She needs rest. One parent found that her 8-year-old's behavior improved when she began requiring that he rest for 30 minutes after school before playing. If your child seems to be totally out of your control, expressing blatant defiance and extreme unruliness, the place to begin gaining control is always your reactions. As you work on improving your reactions, that means taking the stress and strain out of your reactions, improving your self-control, parenting with more peace and poise and awareness in the present moment so that you can select better responses in line with the outcomes you're looking for. As you work on improving your reactions, you are guaranteed to improve your child's behavior. It may not happen in 5 minutes. It may not happen in 5 days. But if you consistently work on improving your reactions, you'll find that you make progress. One of the reactions to improve is how you react when your best efforts fall short. You may work on improving your reactions for a couple of days and still see no progress. Well, how do you react to that? Do you become impatient? Do you become discouraged? Do you become disappointed? Do you become frustrated? Do you start letting go of your self-control and parent in the same old ways? Well, there's a response to improve your results. As you give yourself time to reflect upon how you are living and how you can change the way you handle things, you will find ways to improve your influence over your child and enjoy improved results with your child. And that's all the time we have for today's broadcast of Bob Lancer's Answers. To order a recording of today's show or of previous shows, and for more information about my work, check out my website at boblancer.com.